Everybody, thank you very much for joining us. I'm Barn Schreier. I'm with UCAN. We're here with the champ, Anthony Cassar. What's up, Anthony?
What's going on?
Thanks
Happy to be here.
Yeah, man, it's great to have you. You've been getting hit up about your nutrition for a long time now, so we wanted to come together. We figured, let's give everybody a chance to ask their questions of you, hear, what makes you you, and more importantly, outside of the training, like fueling nutrition and wrestling, it's so critical. So we're really excited to welcome everybody here in our live audience who's excited to hear from you tonight. And I know everybody knows who you are, so I don't even have to give you too much of an introduction, but let me, in case anybody's joining us and you don't know Anthony Cassar, he is a collegiate wrestling champion, won the state title at Penn State University, wrestling at the 285-pound weight class. Anthony also won a state title as a high schooler in Montgomery, New Jersey. And Anthony, what I think is so cool about that is you made the state tournament as a senior and then won the state championship for the first time. You never made the state tournament before. You said, what the heck, let me just win it. So props to you on that. But welcome, Anthony. And thanks again. Tell us a little bit, maybe to start us off before we dive into the meat of the show. How'd you get involved in the sport of wrestling, and why are you so passionate about it?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to thank you, Veron, and UCAN for having me. This is something that I've thought about for a while now, because my DMs are exploding, and it's not with pretty girls, it's with guys trying to bulk up and cut weight, so which is fine. So instead of answering everyone, I figured we'd do this, and I could kind of get out as much information as possible in one go. And yeah, in terms of wrestling, I started when I was about 7 or 8. My dad showed my brothers and I a video of what wrestling was, and it was one guy picking another dude up and throwing him down, and he was like, "Do you guys want to do this?" And we were like, "Of course." And so we started wrestling around then, and then I was on the mat up through high school, but it wasn't really until my sophomore year of high school that I really committed myself to the sport and decided that I wanted to get really good at it. So that kind of led into a late bloom, and then finally achieved my goal of being a state champion my senior year. And then my college career, as most of you guys know, went similarly. Started off and was dealing with that.
Oh, Anthony, I think we got you on mute. If you want to just hit that mic button.
There we go.
There you go.
All good.
Cool.
So then when I got to college, same type of thing. Fought through adversity and eventually, achieved my goal of being a national champion my senior year.
Awesome. And, with wrestling, like nutrition is such a critical part of wrestling. You talked about your DMs, kind of being on fire with people wanting to know how you bulked up. When did you realize the link between nutrition and your wrestling performance?
So it wasn't really until my sophomore year of college that, I grew up eating organic and healthy. My parents were, very, informational about that and aware of that. And then, so I was always eating healthy, but it wasn't until my sophomore year of college where I really decided that I wanted to kind of go back to that and really commit myself to putting the right things in my body. And that was mainly because I wasn't achieving my goals. And ever since I committed myself to that nutrition and everything else, the rest was history.
You talked about being raised, eating healthy. Kind of as your career has evolved, have there been any core nutrition principles that you've tried to stick to? And we're going to certainly, with wrestling, there's bulking up, there's cutting, there's obviously different things that you want to focus on based on what your goals are, but kind of overall, are there any core nutrition principles you try to stick to?
Yeah, so we'll get into the difference between the two, but overall, my main goals are to stay away from the junk food and the crap, which we all know what it is. The simple and refined carbs, the sugar, the sweets, and all the stuff that's not good for you that we all know. And so that stuff I pretty much cut out completely. And then in general, I eat a pretty well balanced diet: high protein, high fat, mid carbs, and it's a pretty well balanced high calorie diet for bulking up, and then low calorie diet for cutting weight. So nothing crazy, staying away from the bad stuff, putting a lot of the good stuff in. And those are kind of, the core principles I stick to.
What's something that's amazing to me is we talk to high level athletes like yourself, or we talk to marathoners. I mean, so much about what you guys do is just about consistency. Like oftentimes it's not so complicated, but you talked about avoiding sugars or processed foods, things like that. Like just being able to stay consistent with some of those core principles can have such a major impact. I'm sure you'll get into that, but Anthony, that's something that struck me just with what you said and kind of talking to athletes who excel at their sports across the board, that consistency and doing the right thing all the time. So let's dive into it. And I want to start out because really we had, over 80 questions that were submitted for this session. We really appreciate everybody in the audience who decided to participate. Really gave me some good guidance for what to talk to you about. But so many of the questions that came in were about bulking up. So let's start the discussion there. And I mentioned it off the top, but you made a remarkable gain in competing at 197, going up to your senior year of college, 285 weight class, and winning the national championship. What went into the decision, just first off the bat, for you to think that you could make, such a drastic weight gain and still excel?
Yeah. So actually when I got to college, I told Coach Kale that I was going to be a heavyweight when I first got there. I was only weighing, blown up 200 pounds, but I kind of knew my body and knew that, I really enjoy eating and lifting and bulking up. I always have. And so it actually was 3 years before I finally made that decision after competing at 197 and doing well there. And after that final season, I was like, my body, can't do this anymore. I was, walking around about 215 and making that cut down to 197 was just too much. So I made the decision after that year. And I spent 6 months just completely dedicated to getting as big and strong as possible while maintaining endurance and not overloading myself with fat. And then, that transpired into my senior season to where I was able to finally achieve that goal, 40 pounds bigger than the previous year, which was pretty crazy.
So one of the things that people wanted to know is when you were bulking up, going from 197 to 285, what was an example of your everyday meals, kind of taking us from breakfast through dinner, and what does a typical day of eating look like for you when you're trying to bulk?
All right, this is what the people want to hear. How many people we got in right now?
I figure we start off giving the people.
How many people we got in right now?
We got let's see, we got 17 and a few more coming in right now, joining us live.
Okay. All right. So a normal day for my meals when I was at the peak of my bulk started out in the morning with a protein bar, a green juice with my fruits and veggies, and then a protein shake. So that was like my first thing when I woke up. I would have a cup of coffee, and that's how I start my day. And then 2 hours later, I'd have my breakfast, which was 7 eggs and 2 potatoes. And so that would be my second meal of the day. And then 2 hours later, I'd have practice. So I try to leave that much time at least to be able to digest all that food. I'd train, do my practice. And then after practice, I'd have my protein shake, which at the time was this insane concoction of pretty much anything that I could find at the grocery store. And my nutritionist helped me come up with this. Basically, it was about 2,000 calories worth of a protein shake that I would just drink out of my blender. And it was
you'd actually hold the blender and just drink it out of that.
Yeah, because it was filled to the top, so there's no point of putting it to anything else. But that had protein powder, milk, avocado, potato, peanut butter, blueberries. Like it was just pretty much all the high calorie foods that I could find. And so I'd slam that after my workout, and then a couple hours later I'd have my first dinner, which was usually chicken breast, avocado, and a sweet potato. That's kind of my staple. I've had that. Cutting, bulking, doesn't matter. That's always one of my meals. And then I'd finish the night off with a pound of ground beef was always my goal. Sometimes I finished it, sometimes I was close, and I'd have 1 cup of organic white rice with that. Then
for the person who somebody asked if the pound of ground beef before you slept was actually true. So I hope whoever asked that question here right now, Anthony just answered that.
Yeah. So that was always a fun sight because I would just make up the pound of ground beef, throw it into a big bowl, throw a scoop of organic white rice into it, and then I would just shovel it into my mouth, barely any seasoning. And then before I went to sleep, I would throw down a protein shake, a casein protein shake for long-lasting protein throughout the night. And if I was really feeling froggy that night, I'd throw down a pint of heavy cream. So So it laid it out seems a little crazier than at the time. At the time, I was just putting my head down and doing whatever my
Right.
nutritionist told me. But it kind of demonstrates what's needed if you want to put on serious mass. You're gonna have to have serious calories. You're not gonna be enjoying eating most of the time, and you're just gonna have to fuel your body to expand and grow. And it's not gonna be super comfortable, but that's kind of what it takes to put on, 40 pounds in a short amount of time. Is you got to kind of shock your body, and that's what my day of meals would look like.
So one of the things that stands out is like you're eating obviously a ton of calories. I want to ask you how much counting you did in a second, but all primarily whole nutrient dense foods. You're not eating a bag of Doritos to get your calories in.
Yeah.
You're really eating high quality nutritious food. So just kind of like how much tougher does that make it too, when it is stuff that it is really highly nutritious that you're trying to
yeah. I mean, when people think of heavyweights, it's like, oh, you can see whatever you want, and that's kind of the reputation it has, and that's why a lot of people fail over the years, trying to go up in weight, and especially going up significant weights, is because they just kind of ditch their discipline and their diet, and they overload on calories, which could be a necessity at first to kind of grow your frame. But if you want to perform in any way, you got to be putting good stuff into your body. And so if you heard my meals, it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't any junk food or sugar or anything like that. It was just high protein, high calorie, and then, just a well-balanced, very large quantity amount of food.
Were you somebody that was counting calories? Like, did you have an idea roughly of how many calories you were trying to get a day? And then also macronutrient wise, were you kind of saying, I want to get this much protein, this much carbohydrate? Like, how are you from a numbers point approaching that?
So I've never been a big counter, macros, calories, anything like that. I had an idea of what I was doing. So when I was cutting weight, I was around that like 1,200, 1,500 mark. And then when I was bulking up, I was around the 5,000, 6,000 mark. So so big disparity there. But I kind of had an idea of where I was at, but I focused more on the meals. So, when I had my first meal, I know I need my 7 eggs to get, I like to get at least 40 grams of protein a meal. So I calculate that out by just, whatever, there's 7 grams of protein and a 6 to 7 in an egg, have 7, that's at least 40 to 50. I throw in my 2 potatoes. I know I have my carb intake there, the fats in the eggs too. So I kind of had a general sense of what I was consuming. And then also I was, I felt like I was consuming to my max. There wasn't much more I can do for each meal. And so I didn't really feel the need to really dial in and count calories or macros.
What about, eating this much and being able to stay lean? So many questions were around that. You're consuming 6,000 to 7,000 calories a day. And, you sort of answered that in the sense that you're not consuming a lot of processed foods and a lot of sugars. But how did you think about bulking up and still trying to stay lean and build lean muscle?
Yeah, so that's always a potential issue. And I see a lot of people, struggling with it because, if you're consuming that many calories, how are you not putting on fat? But like I said, it's got to be the right type of nutrients. For me, it was putting those calories to work. So you can eat a bunch and sit around and it's not going to do too much. You're probably going to put on some weight, but you got to put those calories to work. And so for me, I was, in the gym, working my butt off a couple of times a week. I was still on the wrestling mat a couple of times a week. I was still doing my conditioning. And so all the protein that I was consuming was going into my recovery and my muscle building. All the carbs and fats I was consuming was going into my energy source. So the calories weren't just sitting there. And I think you got to stay strict with that workout cycle and conditioning throughout that bulking, or you're going to, put on an excess amount of fat. And so that's kind of how I balanced it. And
So that's a great segue, Anthony, because there was a lot of questions just around like the specificity of the training when you were trying to bulk up. So we actually have one question from Ryan in the chat here, which similar to questions that people asked us. Did you take on a lot of cardio while you bulked up, or were you kind of structuring your workouts, perhaps differently to support bulking up?
Yeah, so it's tough when you're first making that jump. If you're going up a weight class, it's not too different. But if you're going up 2 or 3 or 4, that first, those first couple months were rough, honestly. Keeping that endurance with wrestling, carrying all that extra weight, your body has to adjust. So during that initial period, you want to take it back a little bit in terms of, going crazy on the wrestling mat. So, maintaining that feel and drilling and play wrestling, and not just like pounding the mat and going live every day, because your body can only take so much when it's trying to adjust to that new weight class. So that's always going to be a struggle. But like I said, if you stay consistent with it, put in the right things in your body, and continuing to keep that cycle of conditioning and wrestling, your body's going to adjust, and it's not going to just, lose all your endurance overnight.
In a similar vein, you talked about kind of balancing out the, eating the calories necessary to bulk up, and also maintaining the training, to kind of make sure that you're also maintaining muscle. When you had rest days, were you adjusting your caloric intake, on days you weren't training, or does the calorie intake stay pretty consistent when you're bulking up, regardless of what's happening with training on that specific day?
Yeah, pretty consistent no matter what, because I knew the next day I'm going to be back at it regardless. So, my recovery day was a good day to, if I could get more in, I would get more in, because I have a little more time and energy to calorie overload. So, it was pretty consistent no matter what was going on, because within 12 to 24 hours, I'm going to be using it.
There's a lot of good stuff on bulking up, Anthony. I know that was something that so many people were interested in, as evidenced by a few questions we also had in the chat. Let's move on and talk about cutting. There will be an opportunity at the end, if there's any other questions from people that are live in the chat, to ask any questions. So if we missed anything, if Anthony didn't hit on anything that you're curious about, feel free to fire away. But this is what's so fascinating about wrestling, right? At one standpoint, we're talking about bulking up and gaining 90 pounds. Now we're going to talk about strategies to cut and lose weight. And I mean, you already highlighted it a short while ago, talking about 12 to 1,500 calories when you're cutting, compared to 6,000 to 7,000 calories. So very, very strategically different ways to think about fueling. When it comes to cutting weight, maybe just starting kind of like foundationally, like when you're in that time where you need to cut, like what are you gearing up to say, this is what I need to do that's most critical?
Yeah, so like I said, it's not some crazy answer. Most of the stuff is simple, that you just have to be disciplined and consistent with, like you said. So when I was cutting down to 197, I had to be extremely strict, because my body wanted to be a lot bigger. So I was eating similar meals, to be honest, just a lot less and a lot frequently. So the big things for cutting weight for me were to, watch my calorie quantity, continuing with my quality of nutrients, watching my sodium levels and my carbs, because, those two things are going to trap the water, trap the weight, and, make it harder to make weight on weigh-in day. So, calories, carbs, sodium, those were the kind of biggest things for me. And I mean, this made me think of UCAN is like, this would be huge if when I was cutting weight, to have freaking UCAN, because my meals for when I was cutting weight was, I would have like 2 to 3 eggs in the morning, with my coffee, and then I wouldn't really eat until practice, because I knew I needed some carbs, so maybe I have some fruit or something, but it was difficult for me to consume a lot of carbs and still keep my weight down. So, but if I had freaking UCAN, I could just slam one of those shakes, a half hour before, low calorie, but it gives me that long lasting, slow digesting carb that you need throughout training. Because there was a couple of days there where, a few eggs just doesn't do it for a 2 hour of practice. So that's something that I would have wished I had. And then that's kind of my mentality with cutting weight, is lower calories, similar nutrients, and watch the stuff that holds the water.
Yeah, and Anthony, just to expand on one thing you were just talking about with UCAN, when you were talking about kind of watching your carbs when you're trying to cut weight, both in terms of drawing in the water, like you mentioned, also in terms of, your typical carbs, your fast acting carbs, your sugars, they're going to spike your blood sugar and put your body more into that fat
Yep.
storage mode in terms of fat burning mode. Whereas UCAN, which is based on a really unique starch, is not spiking your blood sugar, not stimulating that insulin response. So it's really keeping that body
Exactly.
in that burning mode, but it's still giving you that sustained energy. Because, just the scenario you were laying out, like figuring out how to have to train hard, but only having,
Exactly.
coffee and some limited calories in the morning, like that can be challenging, right? Like how hard
Yep.
is training hard when you're cutting?
Yeah, I mean, you got to be smart with it. So I started including, more fats and stuff. The fats are great for energy source because similar to UCAN, they're both long lasting. They're not going to give you that up and down spike of insulin like simple carbs do. And so the same thing with UCAN and fats. It's a similar way that, like Varun said, that it reacts in your body to where it's more of a long lasting energy source. And so if I could, slam a shake or have some nuts and fats before practice, now I've been experimenting with it for about 2 months now. Is a UCAN shake is the only carbs that I'm consuming before practice, which is kind of crazy for what I'm used to. Is, like I said, a couple potatoes and bars and all that stuff, to where now I can consume 30 grams of UCAN super starch, and I don't get that spike and drop off and fatigue and hunger after practice, where I'm just like a steady source throughout a couple hours. Is pretty crazy.
So Anthony, you kind of bridged us into that. Let's talk about fueling for training overall. Well, actually, I want to ask you one more thing on the cutting. Are you a big sweets guy? You said you woke up pretty. You grew up eating pretty clean and not eating sugar. Sweets a thing for you, or a problem for you?
I'm not a big sweets guy. It's hard for me. I get those questions a lot because a lot of people struggle with that. But
right.
I'm more of a salty guy. I mean, I appreciate a good cheesecake or something like that every now and then, but I'm not a big. I'd rather have like a nice salty Chinese food type meal.
Yeah, I mean, he's eating ground beef and rice before he sleeps.
Yeah.
You're not doing the chocolate chip cookie before you sleep. So yeah, we had a few questions about that, avoiding sugar and sweet cravings. But I'd say the best way to do that is just not be a huge sweet guy. Then it's easy.
Yeah, and when I do get those cravings, I would have like a date, some organic dates, like something to kind of curb that, so that's not going to be detrimental. So whether it's like I'd have some fruit or some semi-sweet dark chocolate or some dates, like find something that's still good for you. You're not gonna kill your diet. That would kind of like level out that craving, and then that's kind of how I dealt with that.
Great, yeah. Typically getting something from anything that's a little bit more fibrous, something that's a whole food source, and sweet will work better for your blood sugar. Let's talk about fueling for your training. You talked a little bit about, kind of what you've been doing with UCAN lately. I want to kind of take it back to maybe prior to knowing about UCAN, what you're doing, and then let's kind of move forward and talk about, what you've been doing now for training. But, collegiately, when you were coming up on a big match, big competition, big day of training, what would you eat prior to training?
Yeah, so when I was cutting weight, it was all about getting that number on the scale. And then, we only have about an hour or two before competition starts. So that period of time was for me to get my liquids back in me, with my electrolytes, and then some, fast digesting type fuel source that's not going to sit in my stomach. So I would have some fruit, some nuts, some basic fats and carbs that I wouldn't eat too much, because I had to compete soon, and everyone who wrestles knows how that feels like to wrestle with a full stomach. So and then when I was at heavyweight, I had it nice. I'd wake up in the morning, have my full breakfast a few hours before weigh-ins. I have to get up earlier and get a full breakfast, and so I had about 2 to 3 hours before I competed, and then go on it and compete. But then once I found out about UCAN, like I said, I started replacing most of my, because I would have my simple carbs or whatever carbs I was having, potatoes and rice, to throw in there with my meals. So then instead I would have my protein, which I knew I needed. And then 30 minutes to 45 minutes before I knew I was going to compete or train, I just slam down a shake or have a UCAN bar. and then I was good to go. So a lot of it's kind of transitioning now to where I had to rely on certain carbs, for my energy levels that, weren't reacting the best in my body, to now we have this, patented super starch with UCAN, to where it's just a different feeling and a different reaction.
Yeah, and Anthony, let me just show some folks on the screen if they're not familiar with UCAN. So this is one of the products, the UCAN powder. And like Anthony's talking about, he just mentioned the super starch. That's the carb source that we're talking about. That's unique to UCAN. It's in all the UCAN products, the UCAN Edge, the UCAN powder, the UCAN bars. I'm going to post a link here in the chat where you guys can check out some of Anthony's favorite UCAN products and kind of see everything that we're talking about. But really, the super starch is the slow burning, slow releasing energy source in UCAN. That's the carbohydrate. It's a starch-based carbohydrate, but the super starch was developed for young kids that had a rare metabolic disorder. So it was giving these kids sustained blood sugar, sustained energy for hours so they could sleep through the night. Turns out, as we hear Anthony talking, it's the same thing a lot of athletes want. You want a carb source that's going to digest easily, that's going to keep your blood sugar nice and steady for a long period of time, that's not going to give you those spikes. So it's conducive to long lasting energy and better fat metabolizing, and so that's kind of what UCAN's offering you from a workout perspective. So for you, Anthony, prior to using UCAN, you'd obviously had a lot of success. So whatever nutritional challenges you had, you were able to overcome them, but you're always, as you try to reach the next level, always fine tuning, improving what you're trying to do. So what were some of the struggles you were having nutritionally when it came to fueling competition or training?
Yeah. So, up until my sophomore year of college, like I said, I was just eating, whatever was in the dining commons of my dorm. So, I was, getting a well-balanced diet of whatever they were putting in the food, and, going out on weekends and drinking and doing different things that, living the college life. And then one day I woke up and I hadn't achieved my goal yet. And so I kind of reevaluated where I was at, what I was doing, and my lifestyle just didn't reflect, who I said I wanted to be. It was a national champion. And so that's when I really dialed in, started working very closely with my nutritionist at the training lab and my coaches, and doing all the things necessary, because you can get away with having a bad diet for a while, but eventually it's going to catch up to you, and you're not going to get the most out of your potential, by eating, crap. And so once I made that decision, I just welcomed all the information I can get, and UCAN was some of that information, to where what can I put into my body that's going to help me achieve my goal, that I don't have to worry about. It's that's tested, that someone trusts, and I trust them. So I'm going to take this, fuel my body, and I can trust that I'm going to perform to the best of my ability, and I don't have to worry about, why do I feel so bad today? Because there were times before I made that decision, and even during that, I wasn't doing the right things because I didn't have the knowledge, and I was feeling terrible in training and terrible in competitions, because like I said, your body can only hold on for so long without put the right things in it.
It's really great info, Anthony. Really kind of interesting info about the evolution, right? At any time as an athlete or as anybody, you could only do the best with the knowledge you have, with the tools you have. So kind of that idea of improving, even for somebody that's achieved so much success, state title winner in high school, state title winner, or national championship winner in college, you're still figuring out what are these things that I can do to unlock an even greater level of performance. So
definitely
appreciate you sharing all that. Let's kind of flip to the other side of the workout, which is post-workout recovery. What are your philosophies when it comes to nutrition for recovery? What do you try to give your body? What do you feel like you need after a tough workout?
Yeah. So after every workout, no matter what, I've been doing this for probably 10 years, is one of my only staples since I was a kid, is whey protein. Post-workout protein, you got to get it in. You got to refuel those muscles, help them rebuild, and put those building blocks back into your body. And then with the protein, you want some carbs, which the if I'm not mistaken, the UCAN protein has the super starch energy with it.
This one right here that I'm holding up is the vanilla. It's the energy plus pro. Well, my screen's there. We go. Energy plus protein with the super starch.
So the vanilla is good. The cocoa is fire too. But you want some carbs in there. I won't get too scientific, but you want some carbs in there to optimize that protein to rebuild those muscles. And then, so protein's my main staple. Electrolytes is my second one, which we have the UCAN electrolytes as well.
Yep. Hydration.
Yep. And then so it's really just protein and electrolytes. You got to refuel and put back into your body what you just lost during that workout. So those are my two main things.
And like Anthony, like you mentioned with the UCAN hydrate, great thing is to get in electrolytes without sugars, right? So like the UCAN hydrate doesn't have the added sugar, but it's got sodium, potassium, magnesium. It's replenishing. I think that's what's kind of been interesting listening to you is like you're cognizant of like fueling with the things you need, but not getting excess, like not
exactly.
Like a lot of times people might get caught up and say like, oh, I need 20 grams of protein, but they don't realize that they're pairing it with 25 grams of sugar, right? In a carb protein.
Yeah.
So you want to be mindful of the right carbs, the right protein source. You talked about for you, whey protein is what's worked the best for muscle recovery. The cocoa UCAN, that's got the whey protein in it. Yeah, just being very cognizant of exactly what it is that you're putting into your body. Sounds like that's something you're focused on. Let's talk about supplementation. You know, we talked about UCAN. UCAN, it's a food product, but you know, it's something that you're using kind of supplementally to whole foods. So that's something we've talked about, you know, at length here just now. What other things in terms of supplementation do you focus on, you know, kind of consistently?
Yeah. So when I first started out, the basics were protein, electrolytes, and fruits and vegetables, whether that's in a green juice or, you know, just consuming as much as you can throughout the day, because, you know, we've always been told that growing up, but those really do have the micronutrients and all the little stuff, vitamins and minerals that we need to, you know, perform at our best and to be healthy. And so that's when I started out. When I met with my nutritionist, you know, you got to get the whey protein, the electrolytes, and you got to be consuming your fruits and veggies, whether you're drinking them or eating them. And then also I would say amino acids are big as well. So, you know, whether it's a general comprehensive amino blend or branched chain amino acids that you use throughout your workouts. So I would start off with those, and then you should have a good comprehensive basis of what you need to perform.
We had a few people ask in terms of supplementation, do you take creatine or believe in taking creatine?
Yeah, so I take creatine monohydrate. I'm on, you know, specific cycles, so you want to, you know, be knowledgeable on how to use that. But creatine's been a big part of you know, my bulking up and still being able to perform while cutting weight as well. So I like creatine.
You talked about this at the beginning, but you mentioned, you know, working with the nutritionist. Is that something that you continue to do today? And if you do, why do you do it? How do you feel that it helps you?
Yeah, so I mean, like a lot of these kids that are probably in the webinar is, you know, I was in high school trying to find out what I should be doing. You know, I knew I wanted to get bigger or, you know, get smaller, and it was kind of hard to find out all the information. And you know, nowadays we have an excess of information. So now it's the opposite problem. It's hard to, you know, decipher between what's true and what's false, and who's a fraud and who knows what they're talking about. And so that's the mindset I was in high school. And so that's kind of why we're doing this, is to give you guys, you know, some of the stuff that I've learned and some of the stuff that I've done wrong, and see if you can implement that into your own workouts and lifestyle. And so that's kind of carried into where I'm at today, is I want to get the most information and the right information. And so I seek out, you know, the best people. And for me, that's, you know, my nutritionist right now that I'm working with.
Awesome. Great perspective, Anthony. I think you're so right on about going from like it being tough to get information, you know, maybe just 15, 20 years ago to suddenly today, it's like, man, you could read up on one subject on your phone and get 3 different, like extremely confident takes about it, you know, and then you're left
exactly.
Like, how am I supposed to parse this out?
And then you're just like, screw it. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Or you kind of choose whatever one feels most comfortable for you, you know, oftentimes. Well, Anthony, this has been amazing. I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge. It's clear that you really think about this stuff and are very tactical and deliberate in what you're doing. I hope that came across. I just got one more thing to kind of wrap up with you. In the meantime, you know, if anybody does have any questions, please fire them away in the chat. We'll keep Anthony around here for about another 5 minutes and ask him any questions that people have in the chat. While we give folks time to do that, you have graduated.
I just saw a little comment from my roommate Bo Nickel.
Okay, well, you know what? We
He,
got to give Bo some love. So tell us about
he,
Five Guys Sundays. What's Five Guys Sundays all about? And Bo,
he's
thanks for
he's
that question.
he's blown up my spot after all the information that came out. But yeah, so when I was in that peak build, you know, you got to throw in some meals that make you happy, because 95% of the time I did not enjoy eating at all, because you're consuming so much food. You never let your body get a chance to be hungry. And so, you know, you start getting a negative view of food in general when you're really trying to put on serious mass. And so you got to throw in some meals that spice it up and change it up. And for me, that was Five Guys Sundays with Bo, and some Chipotle in between that. So that was yeah, he just blew up the spot, but that's a good tip.
That's awesome. No, Bo, it's good, man. We have to make people know that Anthony's real. You know, he's not a robot. He
Exactly.
has to have
Yeah.
some Five Guys Sundays mixed in here. So that's a great perspective. You know, you could do things right the bulk of the time and then still give yourself a little bit
Yep.
of a chance to enjoy it every now and then.
Otherwise, you're gonna burn out, and it's not gonna be fun. So you got to throw some of that in there for sure.
In terms of training, Anthony, when you're, and this might be a different, I don't know if this is different for different times of the season, but like how many days a week did you train, and kind of what was the length of time that you would typically train on a typical day?
Yeah, so this always surprises people. My lifting was only twice a week, maybe three times. But you know, I was in there for a good amount of time, up to an hour and a half. But the focus was not, you know, quantity of days, but when I was in there, I was, you know, completely focused and intense on what I was doing and what muscles I was trying to build and the strength I was trying to accrue. So a couple of days a week was enough for me, because you know the calorie intake in the food is the most important thing. That's what people always, you know, forget when they're trying to put on mass and muscle, is if you're not eating enough, doesn't matter how much you train, you're not going to grow, you're not going to get bigger. And so if you're eating enough and getting enough calories in yourself, you can, you know, put on serious muscle and mass with a couple hard days of weightlifting. And I was wrestling a couple days a week as well, still maintaining that endurance and some conditioning in between. So that's kind of how my week looked like throughout bulking up.
Excellent. Well, Anthony, before we let you go, you know, it's been a crazy year for all of us with the pandemic, and kind of hopefully coming out of this now. We've all had, let's see, did I lose you? Oh, there you go. So yeah, you know, we've all kind of had to perhaps readjust our goals and reframe what we're shooting for over the last year. How have you approached the last year from that perspective, and what's next for you, as much as you want to reveal to us?
Yeah, so I think everyone was thrown for a loop, obviously. But for me, it's just like any other adversity that I've faced in my individual life, whether it was injury or, you know, losing matches, not making the starting lineup, or, you know, failing to achieve my goals year after year, is, you know, you got to take a step back, see what the opportunity and lessons are in that adversity, and see how you can improve from it. Because there's always, you know, there's always a silver lining to perceived negatives, and everything that's, you know, negative that's happened in my life, I look back now and realize, you know, because I've taken positive lessons and opportunities from that, it's always led to something better. So that's kind of what I've always tried to do, and what I'm trying to do during this crazy time is, what can we learn from it? What can we get out of it? How can we improve ourselves through it? And then, you know, 5 years from now, we won't look back at 2020 or 2021 as negative times in our life, because we know that, you know, they lead to better things. So that's kind of my mindset on that.
Great words. And for you, as you look ahead, you know, to 2021 and beyond, what's on your radar? What are some of the goals that you're thinking about?
Yeah, so I'm still recovering from surgery on my shoulder, trying to get some of my muscles back, getting back to my bulking up, and then once I'm, you know, healthy and ready to compete, should be, you know, early next year, to where I'm going to be, you know, getting back after, whether it's going to be on a wrestling mat or in the cage fighting MMA. I'm not 100% sure yet, but either way, you know, I'm coming back, and I'm coming back for whatever title is next, after, you know, my next goal.
Well, we're all pumped to see what it is you do next, and no doubt that you got the drive and you know, the will to achieve whatever you want, Anthony, based on what we've seen you do already. just want to thank you again. Thanks so much for it's really, really valuable to have, somebody like you just kind of be willing to share all your secrets with everybody and hopefully, make the next generation of wrestlers more knowledgeable and better equipped to reach their goals. So just really want to thank you for giving up your time tonight. I want to thank everybody in the audience who joined us, everybody who registered for this. I know a lot of folks are going to tune into this,
Yeah.
after the fact. We all have different schedules and stuff like that.
Yep.
But yeah, I just want to thank you so much for giving up so many secrets and so much insight.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Thanks you can for having me on. And yeah, I just want to give out, some of my info and what's worked for me, what hasn't, and hopefully you guys can get something out of it and see if it works for you. And if you guys do want any of the products that we discussed, you can go to link in my bio. I think you put it in the chat as well. And you can get 20% off using the code CHAMP, and you can try all the products we talked about, or not. Try doing it without them and see how you feel, and then add some in. And I'm pretty positive you guys will feel a difference because I'm all in on it now. So yeah, just thank you.
That's awesome. And yeah, we will be sending this out as a recording to everybody that registered probably first thing tomorrow. So you guys will get a chance to re-listen to this, take some notes. Like we see Anthony with the notebook, all high achievers, they're good note takers. So you guys can do that as well. And we will be shooting a link to get UCAN and the discount code to you guys as well. But yeah, check out Anthony's bio on Instagram. Click the link in there, get 20% off on UCAN with the code CHAMP. And Anthony, maybe just one more time for the people, a couple favorite UCAN products that if they do want to do exactly what you're doing, what do you suggest?
Yeah, so I do my energy powder every day before training. I do like a scoop and a half. I like the orange, the tropical orange. And then in the mornings, I used to have a bar with natural sugar in it that would spike my blood sugar. Now I take these UCAN bars. The chocolate peanut butter is dangerous. And then the granola I have at night as like to curb those cravings we were talking about, and then the protein I just ran out. I've just been running through it. The cocoa the whey protein that after every workout. So that's kind of just what I do on a daily basis, along with everything else I share with you guys. If you want to try it. If not, keep doing you.
Awesome. Well, hey Anthony, thanks a lot. Have a great night. Thanks so much for joining us, and we really appreciate everybody joining us tonight. Thank you guys.
Of course. Thanks, guys.
All right.